All right, here we are. It's a live Panther-Lair Post-Game show right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I mean, what do you even say? I think we got a lot to say, obviously. Just kind of getting settled here, tuning in. Everybody's sort of jumping on the live show. And Pitt, 65-64 win over North Carolina on the road, Chapel Hill. And I got about 1,000 things I want to say about this game. I mean, I think you probably do too. So put your comments and questions in there. We'll probably jump to the comments and questions sooner than we usually do because I'm going to say a few of my things, but I have a feeling we're all sort of thinking the same thing. I mean, first of all, that was a hell of a college basketball game. And it's not just because of the outcome. I was thinking, when it was 64-63 at the end, right before, when before that final Pitt possession, 23.7 seconds, Jeff Capel calls a timeout. And I was sitting there thinking, as we're waiting for that timeout to end, I was thinking, this has been a hell of a game. And I thought to myself, because usually there's multiple voices talking at the same time, so I was like, boy, this has been a hell of a game. And I was like, would you still say that if Pitt doesn't win? Like, are you just saying that because or what, are you going to still think that if this score holds, if it's 64-63 and Carolina wins the game? I thought about it and I said, actually, yes. I think I do think I would probably have the same thought because it really was a hell of a game. I mean, these two teams went back and forth. You have big-time players making plays. Obviously you have Nelly Cummings and Jamarius Burton making plays for Pitt. What's his name? Caleb Love scores 22. Pete Nance had a huge game with 13 points. Baycott gets another double-double. We'll talk about him in a second for sure because we got to talk about Armando Baycott's double-double and how hard he had to work for the 15 points that he scored tonight. Because he had to work really, really hard, and that's a credit to one Federico F. Federico. We'll get to that in a minute. It was back and forth. It was competitive. It was a big-time ACC college basketball game. And somebody said this on Twitter, and it just popped into my head now, so I apologize if you were the one who said this. Mad props to you. I forget who it was, but somebody said this is what it was supposed to be when Pitt joined the ACC. This was what everyone was envisioning, that Pitt would then be in these sort of toe-to-toe big-time February games against teams like Carolina and Duke. This is what it was supposed to be, and it hasn't been that yet. But it was tonight, and it's going to be for the rest of the month. I mean, what a win. I mean, what a performance, what a game, and what a win for Jeff Capel and for Pitt. 16-7 overall, 9-3 in the ACC, and playing like a really good team right now. Really good team. This, of course, is the live Panther-Lair show, Panther-Lair Post-Game show. I didn't really introduce the show because, I mean, what the heck? We all know why we're here. It's to talk about Pitt's 65-64 win over Carolina in Chapel Hill tonight. While you're here, make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe button's right down there. I mean, you know where it is, right? I mean, you see the like button, you see the subscribe button. If you like this game, you should like this video. Not because the video is going to be as good as the game, but just because I would appreciate it. And you should also subscribe to our YouTube channel because I would really appreciate that as well. And then, of course, stay tuned at Panther-Lair.com. We're going to have lots of coverage from this game. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. And not just coverage from the game, but on the message boards where there's conversation going on. That's probably the most fun thing to do right now is talk about the game with other Pitt fans. And that's kind of what we're doing here tonight. That's what is a lot of fun to do tonight, is all to get together and talk about the game. It's like a post-game call-in show, except you don't pick up the phone and call and hear your voice. You just type your comments in the chat screen right over there. So put your comments and questions in there. We'll get to it in a few minutes. I'll give a few thoughts about the game, and then we'll start into the comments and questions because, I mean, let's be honest. After a game like this or any of these post-game shows, it's fun to just sort of chat about it. And lots of things jump out from this game. Nelly Cummings jumps out from this game because he was awesome in this game. Jamarius Burton made all the plays you expected him to make. And when Leaky Black got in foul trouble, he really went at it. I think Jamarius Burton played a great game. Nelly Cummings played a great game. Federico. I mean, like, what can you say about Federico F. Federico? I mean, really. 8 points, 4 rebounds. Rebounds I'm not surprised by. If you are Federico and you're going against Armando Bacot, you're going to get out rebounded by a significant amount probably. I'm not surprised by that. In a more favorable matchup, he's going to do better than 4 rebounds. That's about what I expected. The 8 points, I mean, you absolutely take that. 4 or 5 from the floor. Any scoring that you can get out of Federico on an average night, you absolutely take it. Whatever scoring you can get out of him on a night when he's going against a really talented, high caliber player like Armando Bacot, you absolutely take it. But the biggest thing, and you know where I'm going with this because you probably had the same thought, you probably said the same thing or read it on Twitter or said it on Twitter. The biggest thing from Federico tonight was his defense. And I think you could feel it right off the bat. I could sense it right off the bat. And I was shocked by it right off the bat. Of how he defended Armando Bacot. And there was a point, there were a couple of different things that stood out to me on the broadcast, and we don't need to get into dissecting the broadcasters, the anything like that, but there were a couple of points that stood out to me in the broadcast. At the 6:09 mark, and I wrote it down, you can see it here, if you can read that chicken scratch. At the 6:09 mark of the first half, Dan Bonner said, I think the Tar Heels have to play through Bacot. They got to emphasize Bacot more. At the halftime show, Jordan Cornette and those guys said, they just got to go back to Bacot. They got to get the ball to Bacot. And then I think even somebody tweeted it, the fact that Armando Bacot has the 4th most shots for North Carolina is a crime. And they all made it sound like this was some willful decision by North Carolina. Like that Hubert Davis sat down before the game and said, all right, guys, here's the plan. We are not going to get the ball to Bacot. We're not going to try and score with him. This is how these guys were acting and responding to the game. It's like, dudes, did you watch the game? They got the ball to Bacot. They tried to get the ball to Bacot. The plan was for Bacot to lead the team in scoring, just like plan is that every night. The plan is to get him the ball. But what went wrong with that plan was one Federico. Because right from the very start, it became clear that it was not going to be easy for Armando Bacot tonight. And the final stat line bears that out. You start and you just say, oh, he scored 15 points and grabbed 11 rebounds. He had another double-double. He had a great game. He went 3 of 10 from the field. 9 of his 15 points came from the free throw line. And he also went 9 of 15 from the line. He had to earn every point he got. He might have gotten 1 or 2 easy baskets. And eventually he was going to get a couple of those. He was going to get good position. He's a good player. He's a smart player. Except when he forgets which foot was his pivot foot and decides to take a step there at a crucial moment, ultimately costing North Carolina the game, but I digress. He's a smart player. He has high basketball IQ in terms of positioning himself on the court. He's really good at getting good position in the post and setting himself up for easy baskets. And so he did that. But right off the bat, Federico made it clear that it wasn't going to be easy the whole night. And it was a shock to me. It was probably a shock to you to watch those first few possessions where you said, holy crap, he's really defending him really well. And I have to think it was probably a bit of a shock to Armando Bacot. He probably did not expect a considerable defensive challenge from Federico. But that's what he got. And time again, the ball went into Bacot, and the ball came back out. Because Federico had good positioning on him, and he played him hard, and he played him tough. And he took a bunch of fouls, but he was playing really hard against Bacot. Probably the biggest challenge he's going to face all season. And he played really hard against him. That was really impressive. I mean, really impressive. And so, I mean, like I say, Nelly Cummings played a great game. Jamarius Burton played great. Nike Sabandi came up with some huge plays. Federico had as much to do with winning this game as anybody. And when it came down to it, that crucial mistake by Bacot came when Federico and Hinson double-teamed him with such intensity that Bacot forgot which foot was his pivot foot. Huge game by Federico. If you can get that kind of defensive performance out of him and a little more rebounding, which should be the case when you're not going against a rebounding machine like Bacot, who magically is just so adept at grabbing rebounds from behind a guy who's taller than him and not making any contact. It's amazing, really. That play, which play was it? It was when his 2 free throws that gave Carolina the lead, 64-63. He jumped, he was behind Federico and jumped for the offensive rebound and amazingly made no contact. No fouls. It was a magical play. I mean, the guy is basically a magician. Anywho, I digress. Huge game from Federico. Nelly Cummings, just a monster game there. And you can't say enough about his stretch after Carolina went up 46-40. Pitt, at the 18:06 mark, Federico made a basket to give Pitt a 5-point lead, 38-33. Pitt didn't make another basket until the 14:49 mark. Jamarius Burton hit a shot. And by the 12:30 mark, so 5.5 minutes later, over a 5.5 minute stretch, they made 2 field goals and a 38-33 lead turned into a 46-40 deficit until Nelly Cummings took over. 3-point shot, 3-point shot, 3-point shot, 3 of them in a row. Carolina gets a layup, and then the next basket comes with a beautiful bounce pass from Cummings to Federico, who drains it in to give Pitt another lead. I mean, what a game from Nelly Cummings. And, this is a guy who did not have a great first half against Miami and goes out and plays a huge game in the, or has a big performance in the second half to help win that game. And then just comes out and just lights the place on fire in this game here. 21 points from Cummings. He goes 8 of 11 from the floor, 5 of 6 from 3. Jamarius Burton scores 19, 6 of 18 from the floor. He made a 3-pointer, and he shot 6 of 6 from the free throw line. This game, as physical as it was, Pitt attempted 11 free throws. Now, part of the problem was 3 of those 11 attempts were the front end of 1-and-1s. Blake Hinson had one that he missed. Nelly Cummings had one that he missed. And Nike Sabandi had one that he missed. With the Cummings and Sabandi missed front ends in the final 5:13 of the game. Those were huge. Now, Carolina also went 13 of 22 from the line, so we're not going to say it was all about the free throw shooting. But in a game with 38 fouls called, to only have 11 free throw attempts is pretty remarkable number. This was a game where some of Pitt's biggest vulnerabilities were on display. They got out rebounded by 9, 43-34. They gave up 19 offensive rebounds. They had some considerable cold spells, didn't make a field goal in the final 3.5 minutes of the game. But they also were able to show some of their biggest strengths. They shot themselves out of some issues, like when Cummings went on that run where he made 3 threes in a row. And they had the resilience at the end. There was never a point where I felt like Pitt was, despite Dan Bonner's best contentions, that this was where the game is getting really dangerous for Pitt, when it can really slip away. I never felt concerned for Pitt, if that makes any sense. Even though they're down 46-40. This team has composure. This team keeps themselves together. And quite frankly, I think they had Carolina rattled a little bit. I really do. Even though Carolina had a lead, I feel like Pitt got under their skin. And for as much as, last week we talked about the 2002-2003 team, we talked about, what that team did well and all those things. All those Howland and Dixon teams, they were all really good at frustrating their opponents, rattling their opponents, and getting under their skin with tough defense and physicality. And that's what Pitt brought to the Dean Dome tonight. That's what Pitt did. They played really tough defense, got really physical, and I think they rattled Carolina a little bit. And Carolina was the team who was pressing. Carolina was the team who was struggling, particularly early in the game. All right, we got so many comments and questions here. I want to jump in on this and get to everything you guys are saying, because you guys got a ton out here. It's awesome. First, I got to make sure I tell you about our friend Chris Gates, right? You guys know about Chris Gates. Our Wednesday night live show every week is sponsored by Chris Gates Fitness. Chris is an online fitness coach from Pittsburgh, and he works with people all over the world to create customized fitness and nutrition programs that work. And he's also a huge Pitt fan, and he loves supporting these live shows every week, whether it's our regular Panther-Lair show or our post-game shows. Now, once you're done listening to the show tonight or whenever you listen to it later in the week, go check out Chris's podcast. Chris does a health and fitness, nutrition, lifestyle podcast. He publishes a brand new episode every week where he answers listener questions on fitness and nutrition and dives deep on topics to help you put together the right routine to see progress. And where are you going to find this? Well, you go to any podcast platform, and search Chris Gates Fitness. I almost said the website. Search Chris Gates Fitness, ChrisGates Fitness. Search that on any podcast platform, or go to his website, chrisgatesfitness.com/podcast. For links, you can listen and you can subscribe and really get some great advice on health and nutrition and fitness from somebody who's a huge Pitt fan, right? So you got somebody who's really good at that stuff, and he's a big time Pitt fan. He supports our podcast. So you can't lose. Go to chrisgatesfitness.com not right now, when you're done listening to this, and see what Chris has to say. I think you're going to be really interested in it, and I think it'll help you, in some of your fitness, your own goals in health and nutrition. All right, let's jump into it here on the super chat, or on the chat screen here. We, of course, if you want to make sure your comments and questions get read, you can be a super chatter. You can click that little $ down there, and throw a couple bucks to the podcast. We appreciate that very much. We'll make sure we get to your comments and questions if you do. Whiskey Coach is a super chatter. I appreciate it. I'm not sure what your comment was when I see it here. Maybe this is it here. Whiskey Coach says, not trying to be a wet blanket here, I swear, but anyone else consider the possibility that Capel has caught lightning in a bottle with a crazy veteran-laden team this year? That said, it's been a fun season. Okay, so yeah. Quick thought on that. Yes. All right. Yes. There is a lightning in a bottle element to this team. You get a bunch of guys who are not going to be back next year. Nike Sabandi's done. I think Greg Elliott's done. I think Jamarius Burton's done. Nelly Cummings is done. Those are the guys that are out of eligibility. You're not going to have them back, and you're going to be rebuilding to some extent again next year. But I thought this was really interesting. And I forget if it was on Twitter or on the message boards where somebody said this, that, like, in a way, the transfer portal has created a new one-and-done system. The one-and-done system was always Kentucky and Kansas and Duke and Carolina would build with these one-and-done players who'd be 5-star McDonald's All-Americans, would come in and play for 1 year and go to the NBA. Well, there's still that. You're still going to build there are still teams that are going to try and build that way. But there's this new kind of one-and-done system where you go get veteran players who can fill out your roster or make up the foundation of your roster for 1 year, because that's all they have left in eligibility, and then they move on. And yes, that's the kind of team that Jeff Capel built this year, and it worked. Can he do it again next year? I don't know. To be honest, I really don't care, because right now, this year's team is playing really well. There's always going to be that lurking thought in the back of your mind. I'm always going to have it lurking in the back of my mind of like, yeah, but are they going to be able to do this again next year? I don't know, because all these guys are going to be gone. But you know what? They're here now, and it's pretty fun to watch them now. And they keep winning games like this one, or the Miami game, or the Wake Forest game, or the Virginia game, or the first Carolina game, Syracuse game. Like, they keep winning these kinds of games, emerging and developing and presenting themselves as legitimately a good team, getting closer and closer to an NCAA tournament berth. And look, they came into today with 9 regular season games left, right? And when we all looked at those 9 regular season games, we said, well, there's 3 that really stand out as being the toughest. And one is that game at Miami at the end of the season. Another is a game at Florida State where they already lost to Florida State at home. And then the third, which was actually the first because it comes first on the schedule, was tonight's game. Well, there you go. They're ahead of the game because they won this one at Carolina. And I think looked pretty darn good doing it. And I don't know what the computer metrics are going to say. I don't know how the net rankings are going to like them. But you know what? Just keep winning. Just keep winning games. Because eventually you're going to win so much that they're not going to be able to keep you out. Regardless of the fact that you lost to Florida State a couple weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago, or a week ago, or whenever that was. It's not going to matter if you just keep winning. And the way they played tonight, and the way they played against Miami, and the way they played against Wake Forest, they should be able to keep winning and winning and winning. All right. Isaac Steinkamp says, can't wait to wake up to updated March Madness projections tomorrow from Joe Lenardi saying we're first four out. Like I said, and Jeff Capel said it, that, if you keep winning, you're going to get in the rankings and all those things. I mean, the reality is with the NCAA tournament, Pitt's best way to get in the NCAA tournament is just force their way in by just continuing to win. Keep piling up the wins. You've got 8 more games here. You can win all 8 of them. You've got one team on the schedule left who you've already lost to, and now you're going to have to play them on the road, so that's a challenge, but that's not a game you should have lost in the first place. The only game that you have this game at Miami that's going to be really tough because you just barely got past Miami at home. That's going to be a tough one, but are you betting against this team at this point? Are you betting against this team? I mean, I think they've shown they can win in a lot of different ways, and they can win in a lot of different environments, and they've got the energy and the talent to carry them through some adversity. And they face adversity tonight. I mean, there's no question about it. They faced adversity in the Miami game. They faced adversity in this game, and they overcame it. They're not going to always overcome adversity. The Duke game, they didn't overcome adversity. Florida State game, they didn't overcome adversity. But more often than not, they have. Especially since they got into the ACC schedule. They've been able to overcome adversity due to their experience, their age, the composure, the talent. That's a pretty good combination of traits to have as you move through the college basketball season. Scott Mitchell says, I keep thinking the 4 and 5 positions will cost multiple games, but Pitt just finds different ways to win. So happy for Burton being clutch. Yeah, I mean, as far as the 4 goes, Blake Hinson, 1 of 7 from the floor tonight, 0 of 4 from 3, missed his 1 free throw attempt. He did have 6 rebounds, which I didn't really see that happening. Did anybody notice when that happened? I noticed Nike Sabandi grabbing a lot of rebounds. He ended up with a team-high 7. Jamarius Burton grabbed 5. I kind of missed Blake Hinson getting 6 rebounds. I don't know if, he went out. When did Hinson go out with 2 fouls? 7:47 mark of the first half. He went out with 2 fouls. I wonder if that kind of slowed him down. Because I don't think he had made a basket at that point. I wonder, because he went out with 2 fouls. I don't think he came back. He didn't come back in for the rest of the half. So he sat out the final 7:47 of the first half. And maybe he just was cold. You know what I mean? And just couldn't ever really get on track because he missed all that time in the beginning. I still think you're going to get more good games than bad games out of Blake Hinson. He's going to help you win more than he causes you to lose. And this game, obviously wasn't his best. I don't, there's no question about it. But you still want him on the court as much as you can. And I know you're not advocating taking Blake Hinson off the court. He's their best option at the 4. You need him to stay out of foul trouble so he can stay on the court and get into a rhythm offensively. And Federico, like I'm at the point where I think, like, if you get 6 and 8 out of him on a nightly basis, that's a great game. I mean, that's a great game. He's not always going to have the challenge that he had tonight in terms of who he's playing against. Fighting for rebounds. It's not always going to be as challenging as it was. This was one of the biggest challenges he's going to face. He'll do better against lesser competition. And that's not to say he's going to face a bunch of bums, but Armando Bacot's the best. And so when you go against other guys, he's going to be able to have more success. And I have to think, for a guy who probably came in to the season with some confidence questions, I have to think that playing defense against Bacot the way he did is going to create a huge confidence boost for Federico going forward. I really believe that. And if he keeps building his confidence and getting more sure of himself out there, that's only going to lead, I think, to improved play. He's never going to get stronger in the course of this season. That's not going to happen. But he can get more confident. He can get more aggressive. He can get more assertive and make life more difficult for his opponents. So the 5 is not going to be a strength for Pitt this season, but I think they can, still get some useful time out of him, and particularly even if he just helps you defensively. I think if he just helps you defensively and grabs, 6 defensive rebounds every game, I think that's huge. And adds like 1 or 2 offensive boards. I think that's a good performance from Federico. They're showing the highlights from the game here on the ACC network. And of course, the first highlight they show is RJ Davis going coast to coast. The ACC, man. That's wild. At least they went to Nelly Cummings hitting a 3 after that. I mean, come on, man. And then a 3, and then a 3, and then a 3. Yeah, at least they're giving Nelly Cummings some props, but jeez, man. Anyway, all right, let's move on here. Ed Mahoney says, another gutsy win. First loss at home for Carolina. Burton continues to be clutch in every game someone else is stepping up. They seem to care about each other and playing as a team. Loving it. Yeah, if you if you watched the they're now they're highlighting Jamarius Burton. Jamarius Burton's final drive when he drew the foul, playing it in super slow motion because it couldn't have been that Carolina actually fouled him on that play. So if you watched the morning Pitt this morning, on Wednesday morning, I talked about why this Pitt team is so likable. About what really stands out to me is, in addition to, they have good shooting and they have these veteran guards and they have this and they have that and the record and the wins and all this stuff. Just they're a likable team. They seem like a likable team. And why is that? And I went over a bunch of different things. And one part of it is something that Jeff Capel's talked a lot about, the players have talked a lot about. They genuinely seem to care about each other. They genuinely have that sense of togetherness. And I don't think that can be overlooked. As I said this morning, we wouldn't be talking about this if they were 3-9 in the ACC. If they were 7-16 overall, we wouldn't be talking about it. Nobody would give a damn that they care about each other if that were the case. But that's not the case. The reality is they are 16-7 and 9-3. And the reality is, I think when you have a team that sort of seems to really enjoy playing together the way these players do, seems to really care about each other the way these players seem to, I do think that can lend itself to success on the court. Nelly Cummings was the hot hand for a long stretch in this game. So guess where the ball went? Nelly Cummings. When Leaky Black got into trouble with 4 fouls, guess where the ball went? They knew it was important to get the ball to Jamarius Burton. When Jeff Capel called a timeout with 23.7 seconds and said, listen, guys, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give the ball to JB. He's going to dribble around for like 15 seconds, and then he's going to drive and either try and get a good shot or draw a foul. I think every other guy there said, hell yeah, coach. That's the move. I really believe that. Because Jeff Capel said it after Saturday's game. They just want to win. They're not as concerned about individual glory. They want Pitt to have the glory because they know that if Pitt succeeds, they will reap individual glory and success from it. And I think that is leading to some of the success they're having on the court. I think part of the problem in previous seasons is they have had guys who have tried to been more concerned about their stat lines, have been more concerned about what they do as opposed to what the team does, about their success as opposed to what, the team's success. This team, for whatever reason, maybe it's the personalities, maybe it's the character, maybe it's the veteran, nature of some of these guys, the experience that they have. They've all been around a lot of places. They've been around college basketball a lot. These older guys who are ultimately setting the tone for the rest of the team, they seem to understand that, look, man, if you are playing great, but the team stinks, nobody's going to care. But if you are playing great and the team's doing well, and your teammates are playing great and the team is doing well, everybody's going to start paying attention to you. Everybody's going to notice what you're doing, and they're all buying into it. And I think guys like Nelly Cummings, Jamarius Burton, Greg Elliott, Blake Hinson, I think they set that tone. Nike Sabandi, they set that tone. All these veteran guys that we talk about, all these 5th and 6th year players that we talk about, particularly Jamarius Burton, particularly Nelly Cummings, particularly Nike Sabandi, particularly Greg Elliott, and even Blake Hinson, although I guess he's younger than those other guys we're talking about. We're talking about a bunch of 5th and 6th year guards in Cummings, Burton, Elliott, Sabandi. They set that tone, and I think the younger players pick up on it. The younger players are following that mold. And I think, there are a lot of things you can look at. There are a lot of successful Pitt teams you can look at where there was sort of a connection from older players to younger players, and then the younger players become the older players and they pass that culture on to the next wave of younger players. And I mean, you can draw a straight line through from Brandon Knight through Carl Krauser through Levance Fields on to Trey Woodall and James Robinson. I mean, like, and that's just the point guards. You can draw a straight line through those guys from Jerron Brown all the way through Lamar Patterson. You can draw a straight line through these guys of establishing learning the culture from the older players, and then going on to establish it and pass it on yourself. And right now, you have sort of the first stage of that happening. The culture is established and being established by Jamarius Burton, by Nelly Cummings, by Nike Sabandi. These older guys are establishing the culture and they're passing it on to the younger players. And you hope, if you're Jeff Capel, if you're a Pitt fan or whoever, you hope that Dior Johnson, the Diaz-Graham twins, the Nate Santos, that these guys are picking up on it and they're going to carry it on and pass it down to the next wave of younger players. That's how you actually build a culture. And that's ultimately how you build a program. And, you have at least the foundation being laid this season. And it's turning into success. I mean, like, that's the easiest way to sell something like this is when you're going out and you're winning games and you're having a good year and you make the NCAA tournament and have some success. If you have that, then you can sell it and say, this is how we did it. It's because of the culture we have here. Let's see. Matt P says, so many bright spots. Burton, ho-hum. Nelly's coming out party. But how about Fetty? We didn't know if this guy was ready for ACC competition. Multiple blocks and drew a frustration foul from Baycott. Yeah, the frustration foul, absolutely. I swear I wrote that down. When did that happen? He got really annoyed. Oh, it was in the second half. I'm looking at the first half. He got really frustrated. It was a great play because Federico blocked him. Where was that? Federico, I think, blocked a shot or grabbed a rebound, and and Baycott fouled him. Just fouled him out of frustration. I mean, to force him into that situation was pretty outstanding. Great work by Federico. Scott Eisenberg says, do we have to update the rankings for Capel's best win again? Well, did the Miami game take the cake there? It might still be there because they had to come back from like an 11-point deficit. You know what I mean? The Miami game might still be the one at the top just because of having to manufacture a comeback. But this one's pretty high up. It happened on the road. Happened against a pretty good Carolina team. A lot of resilience. They battled back from a couple deficits. Battled back in the very end. Won the game with 3.4 seconds left to go. This one's up there. But you know what? The cool thing about this year is they're stacking up wins, good wins, at such a rate that it's hard to sort of even keep up with them and track them in that way, to rank them in that sense. Evan D402 says someone needs to ask Baycott who his daddy is. Got all the calls tonight, and Federico actually sunned him. If UNC is ahead of Pitt in any tournament rankings, then the whole thing is a joke. Scott Eisenberg adds, Federico did just about as well as anybody could against Baycott. Some of those fouls were complete nonsense. I mean, look at the stat line for Baycott. 15 points, 11 rebounds. 3 of 10 from the floor, 9 of 15 from the free throw line. 3 fouls, 2 turnovers, 1 assist. To me, the 3 of 10 and the 9 of 15 from the free throw line, they were forcing him into bad shots. Forcing him into shots that he wasn't able to make, and fouling him and sending him to the line, and I think creating some frustration for Baycott. And I think it came through in his stat line. So I mean, it goes down as 15 and 11. It goes down as whatever it was, his 62nd career double or something like that. But it came really hard, and he had to work really hard to get it. And probably a lot harder than he expected to, I would guess. A lot harder than I expected him to. I can say that. Let's see. What else? What are you guys saying here? TVax1 says, overcoming those 2 missed front ends of 1-and-1 was great. Shocking who missed them, but nobody let up or hung head. I mean, it was three, really. There was three. At the 13:02 mark in the second half, Blake Hinson missed the front end of a 1-and-1. At that point, Pitt was down 44-40. Hinson goes to the line, misses the front end. And then, and then the two that you're talking about, Nelly Cummings missing one at the 5:13 mark and Sabandi missing one at the 2:46 mark. I mean, that's ultimately 6 points left on the floor from missing the front end of a 1-and-1. And, I mean, Carolina missed 9 free throws as well. So, I mean, they're going to kick themselves about that, say, oh, we lost the game by 9 points and we missed we lost the game by 1 point and missed 9 free throws. Pitt only missed 3. They just all were front ends of 1-and-1. Let's see. Chevy Troutman, who I don't really believe is the real Chevy Troutman, but that's okay, says, be careful of the danger zone. This game could get away from Pitt. They kept, they kept saying that. Dan Bonner kept saying that. All that through that stretch there where Carolina was coming back when Pitt only made like 2 baskets over the course of 5+ minutes. He kept saying that this is where the game can really get away from Pitt. This is where the game can really get away from Pitt. And like, Wes Durham and Dan Bonner have done Pitt games all year. I mean, we've heard them on a lot of Pitt games, or at least, since ACC play. And I assume that these guys pay attention to what's going on in the conference. This Pitt team, it's pretty hard to put them away like that. You know what I mean? To just, Duke ran away from Pitt. Duke absolutely put Pitt away and took off. And maybe that's what they're thinking of as well. That was a game where, Pitt got down, and then, it ultimately did. The game got away from them. And maybe that's what they're thinking of. Maybe that's the reference point. But for the most part, this Pitt team, you can't really count them out. They were down double digits to Virginia in the second half. They were down 11 to Miami at one point. And they came back in those games. You know what I mean? Like, they were down 9 to Carolina in the first game. And you're concerned when they're down 6 with 13 minutes left to play? I mean, this Pitt team has shown itself to be fairly resilient. I think you can count on them. I don't think you can count out the possibility of a comeback because they've been pretty much doing it all year. It's hard to just put this team away and whatever you want to say, put your foot on their neck or whatever it is. I mean, they are pretty resilient. They have a lot of composure. They don't really get rattled. And they're going to make you fight to the end if you're going to beat them. And that's what they did. And then they, with Carolina, and ultimately won the game. Michael Zimmerman says, Greg Elliott sprinting all the way down the court to back up Nelly Cummings in his moment with R.J. Davis. True teammate. Yeah, Greg Elliott's a great teammate. That was a dangerous situation for him to run in there. You'll like him to back up his teammate, but you don't want to take an extra technical foul. I think that was on the double tech, right? I mean, you've already got a double technical foul. You don't necessarily, so it's even. Nobody's getting any extra shots. So you don't want to be the one who runs in and causes it to be causes an extra technical foul and Carolina to get two extra free throws out of it. You don't want to give anybody free points like that. Chris Bernicle says this team fights like an old Big East team. Yeah, they really do. I mean, they have that resilience. They have that physicality. And I think they're growing more and more confident about their ability to rattle opponents. And I'd be curious to ask them about this. If they've sort of slowly over the course of the season realized how they can rattle teams with defense. They know what they can do offensively. They know they can make baskets. They know they can shoot threes. They know they can hit all the mid-range jumpers anyone could ever hope to see. But I wonder if they've sort of figured out over the course of the season that, hey, if we play tough on defense, we can actually really annoy people and get under their skin and force them to take bad shots and give us even a better chance to win. I think they locked down on defense in the final 2 minutes of that Miami game. That's been the biggest talking point coming out of that game was the 11-0 run, which I thought was just as remarkable for the fact that they hit baskets late in the game, made baskets of their own late in the game, but it was also extremely remarkable for the defense and how they defended late and Burton defending Wong and how they were really able, I think, to get under their skin And I think they found it out again today. They saw that. I think they got Carolina pretty frustrated in this game. And I think this team is, if this team can really embrace that and commit to it, commit to playing defense like that, and they might lose their legs. They might burn off, whatever legs they have because they just don't have much of a rotation right now. But if they can commit to that, along with the shooting they have and the offense they have, I mean, this is a team that can do some damage. This is a team that can win a lot of games and beat a lot of teams. Dennis Hurl says, I have to be up at 4 a.m. for work, and it's going to be rough to sleep tonight. Woo! Ric Flair voice. Pittsburgh Sports All the Time says, yet another 1.1 possession win. Can we get an easy one next time we play Louisville or Georgia Tech? My heart can't take this much longer. Yeah, it was. They make it exciting, don't they? But when you're playing good teams, you're going to have these competitive games. You know what I mean? Like, and you're only going to run into that more. I mean, you only have a few more that should be like this over the course of the rest of the regular season, but you're going to run into that in the ACC tournament, and you're going to run into that in the NCAA tournament. That you're going to be in these competitive games, and I think you have to like the fact that this team has shown an ability to play in these games, to survive in these games, and to succeed and flourish in these kinds of games. Willat Harris says, got to give Cummings a ton of credit playing against that backcourt. He stood up amazingly. He sure did. And we talk about the 3 threes in a row, but some of his shots in the first half. Let me find out when he made a 3. That was his first basket in the game. Oh, Blake Hinson's shot was the very first bucket of the game. I forgot about that. No, but Cummings hit a 3 was his first basket, but then he had a jump shot. He had a runner. I think he had a little turnaround thing. He hit another 3. He was just shooting from all over the place and pretty much making them from all over the place. I mean, he was just really on tonight. And it's been said a lot by a lot of people. I mean, probably me as well, and certainly. I've seen it on Twitter and the message boards and things like that. This is a different team and such an explosive and dangerous team when he's scoring, when he's able to hit those shots. Jamarius Burton's always going to provide offense. He's always going to make shots. He's always going to make baskets. That's a given. When you have Nelly Cummings going as well, it gets really, really tough to defend this team. And if you get one of these games when Burton's just doing his thing, when Burton's doing what he always does, and Cummings is on, and Blake Hinson starts knocking down some shots, now you got to defend all those guys. Now Greg Elliott's going to be open, and he's going to be, you know what I mean? Like, this team has enough weapons to give most opposing coaches and players some nightmares about how you're going to defend them. And you can only hope that you get an off night out of Blake Hinson and Nelly Cummings. But getting an off night out of both of those guys on the same night, I don't know how likely that is. This is a dangerous team. Patrick Broderick says, is it new this season that slowing down and having a defender hit you in the back is an offensive foul? I know Trae Young has been told he can't do that anymore. Seems crazy. Nelly fouled out on it. Yeah, that offensive foul, like, I don't know if I saw a lot of complaining about it, but, I mean, to me, it just looked like Nelly Cummings slowed down. It didn't look like that, he did anything to be called for a foul on that offensive play. I disagreed with that. That wasn't the one he fouled out on. That was his 4th foul. He fouled out on Carolina's ensuing possession. But I didn't like that. I didn't like that one either. Will Z says, let's go. I've never been so glad to be wrong about this team. I feel 5 is the magic number to make the tournament. It could be 4, but you'd have to win a conference tournament game. Fetty shut down Baycott and still got no calls when Baycott kept fouling him on the offensive end. Yeah, I agree about that. As far as what it takes to make the tournament, we were talking about this today because we were down in the South Side, Pitt writers interviewing some of the early enrolling Pitt players, transfers, Christian Vair and Lamar Seymour and Dejon Reynolds. We talked to those guys today. And we were talking about what it would take. And I said I felt like 21's a lock. And if you get to 20 wins, you should have a pretty good chance. If you get to 21, you're going to be pretty much a lock. And we realized, we went back and looked at Wake Forest last year. Just in terms of total wins, they finished 25-10, I think it was. But 2 of their wins came in the NIT. They won 23 regular season games. and still didn't make the NCAA tournament. So maybe 21's not a lock. I would have to compare sort of quality wins, but just in terms of overall total number of wins, maybe 21's not a lock. I don't know. It all depends on how much that Florida State loss gets held against them. And it depends on, you have to avoid, you can't lose to like Boston College or Virginia Tech or Georgia Tech. I mean, you've got to Notre Dame. You can't lose those games. If the only game Pitt loses here on out is Miami, and I'm not saying that's going to happen, 16-4 in the ACC, and what would they be? 23. That would be 23 regular season wins. They should be in pretty good shape. Now they might win the regular season, be the number 1 seed in the ACC tournament if they go 16-4. I don't know. I don't know what the magic number is. I don't know what the guaranteed sure thing number is. I would have thought 21 would do it, but maybe that's not enough. But maybe they have enough good wins with Virginia and Carolina twice and Miami. Maybe they have enough good wins that they can get in at 21 wins. I say you just keep winning. Just keep winning. Frank Pancheroni says, super physical game. Pitt got hit several times in the mouth, but bounced back each time. Proud of this team. They did. They took some shots, but they gave some shots too. I really think they were able to go toe to toe with Carolina, and like I've been struggling to sort of think of the best way to say it. I don't know if I necessarily want to say they controlled the game, because I don't think they did control the game. They were behind it at points in the game, but they were sort of like the more powerful team. Carolina was pressing, particularly in the first half. And I think they took some bad shots and they got lucky and they went in. Pitt was taking good shots and they got unlucky and some of them didn't fall. But Pitt's defense was forcing Carolina to press and have to sort of struggle and be stressed in ways they probably didn't expect to be stressed. I don't want to say that Carolina was intimidated by Pitt, but it sort of looked like Carolina was the team that was feeling pressure in the game, whereas Pitt was the team that looked comfortable in the game. Now, I mean, particularly in the first half. In the second half, things did get a little bit dicey. They went in a couple offensive droughts, and I think they started to press a little bit. But all in all, this team was really good tonight, and for most of this, at least the ACC schedule, they've been really good at keeping their composure and not losing it and staying strong even when things get a little bit tight and there's some adversity. They're really good at handling it. At least they have been. Sam Snyder says, this has been the funnest basketball team I've watched in a while. They are never out of any game. I love their chemistry too. So pumped. Yeah. I agree. I mean, particularly if we're talking about Pitt teams, no Pitt team has won like this since, Jamie Dixon's last team or maybe before that. So yeah, absolutely. They're, the most fun to watch. I mean, I was looking at the ACC win totals. Yeah, so Pitt's first year in the ACC, they won 11 games. They won 11-7, and they haven't won more than 9 games since then. They went 9-9 in Dixon's last year, and they've already got 9 ACC wins this year. So, yeah, they are the funnest Pitt team to watch because they're winning, and like you said, they never really seem to be out of a game. They can always shoot themselves back into a game, and that the adversity doesn't really faze them. They can handle it. ZC717 says, I didn't want to say anything because 2 years ago, Pitt got off to a great start, and I thought they were back, and the wheels fell off. But this team, yeah, they are for real. I mean, at this point, 23 games into the season, 12 games into the ACC schedule, I feel like that's a big enough sample size. You know what I mean? I feel like that's a big enough sample size to say, yes, this team is for real. They haven't clinched a winning record in the ACC or anything like that, but I think it's a big enough sample size that we can buy into this team and say they're a good team. Night after night, they've got a chance to win every game they play, and they're winning most of them. I think we can say it. I think you can go for it. Dave, I'm going to try and burn through as many of these comments as we can. Dave Yark says, outside of the usual scorers on this team, Fetty has been an MVP in my book because he does all the little things that make Pitt go offensively and defensively. I really think we're going to see Federico continue to improve defensively. I think as his confidence grows, his strength can't grow in the course of the season, but as his confidence grows, I think we're going to see him get better and better and play better and better. This game had to have been a huge confidence boost for him. And I think that can only make him more effective on that end of the court. I really do. And I think you're going to see him keep playing better and better. Like I said, if you get 6 or 8 points and 6 or 8 rebounds out of him, that's a good stat line. That's an acceptable stat line. Maybe a block or two. But defensively, you want to see him make it really difficult for opposing centers to score. You know what I mean? You want to see him play well under the basket, around the, in the post, defensively. That's what I think you want to see most. That's what you want to get most out of Federico over the course of the rest of the season. I mean, they have a lot of guys who can score. They have plenty of guys who can score. It'd be nice if you could get scoring out of the center position. It's not necessary on this team because of how many other scoring options they have. What they really need most out of Federico is as much rebounding as he can possibly offer and defense. They need him to play good defense and rebound as much as he can. That's the key for Federico this year. And I think he'll keep getting better at it game to game this season. Let's see here. Pittsburgh Sports All the Time says, let's not forget about Nelly putting the team on his back for a while there. Yeah, Nelly was outstanding. He was great. I mean, he played maybe his best game at Pitt, and crushed it. Let's see. Scrolling through here, J.M. Zag says, gutsy performance from Pitt. Pitt defended Baycott beautifully. Fetty did a nice job, and I thought Pitt did an excellent job at doubling Baycott too. Capel deserves credit for his defensive game plan. Yeah, it was, that was a crucial play. I mean, the crucial mistake by Baycott was the travel, and the travel came because they doubled him in the post. Federico was on him. Henson came down and doubled and forced him to travel. I mean, that was the moment. That's less than 30 seconds left to go in the game. Carolina's up by 1. And that travel turns the ball over. They bring the ball up over half court. You get, take 4 seconds off the clock. It's 23.7. Pitt calls a timeout. And, we know what happens from there. Jamarius Burton makes a couple dribbles around, draws a foul, and makes a couple free throws to win the game, 65-64. But yeah, doubling Baycott in that situation forced him, I guess, to travel. Put some pressure on him down near the baseline. Let's see. TVAX1 says announcers are hard to listen to the whole game, but particularly want to mention how one mentioned how Pitt would have a problem in the end with their quad 4 loss as compared to Carolina without. Yeah, probably. That's neither here nor there. Honestly, it's more fun to talk about the announcers in the middle of the game. Like if we're all just sitting there watching them, like, what is this guy saying? What is he talking about? What does that mean? After the game, I kind of forget some of those comments. There were a few things that I remembered and 1 or 2 that I even wrote down, but I forget the one that you're talking about. But look, that Florida State loss is going to haunt Pitt all season. If they have another one like that, it's going to be a real problem. If they just keep it to that one, I think they can overcome it with more good wins. So if that's what they were saying, then I guess I agree. But ultimately, I forget it. I forget what they were even saying, what they were talking about at that point. Let's scroll through here. Wayne Lice says, Pitt is a tough team to play. 5 guys that can score. Other teams cannot key on any one player. I think that's absolutely true. I think, like I say, you get one guy going, and the if you really focus on taking away Jamarius Burton. Nelly Cummings can make baskets. Blake Hinson can make baskets. Greg Elliott can make baskets. Nike Sabandi can come off the bench and make baskets. They got a lot of guys who can score. There's no question about that. Jeremy Tunney says, first one of these I've caught live in a while. I listen every morning. Thanks for all the awesome content. Yeah, Jeremy, glad to have you back. We haven't seen you around on the live stream in a while. Hope you've been doing well. Let's see. Pittsburgh Sports All the Time says, here's an idea. Finish in the top 4 in the ACC, win 3 games at the tournament, and become ACC champions. Hey, if you want to make the NCAA tournament, one way you can be guaranteed to do so is by winning your conference championship, right? Lad Scrimpton says Hinson had some key defensive plays too. He had a couple good double teams on Baycott that probably saved points. Yeah, I think he played a pretty solid defensive game. His offensive game wasn't clicking, and they need guys like him to score. They need guys like him to have their offensive games going. Chancellor Pink says hands and girth are an issue with Guillermo. It's troubling when Federico and Hinson are out, but otherwise this team is set to overcome everything. But do you think Burton is capable of being the guy for the shot in every game? I thought, for example, Cummings should have had the last shot tonight. I would prefer it changed per the hot hand. So my only thought on that, I think it's an interesting idea. I think it's an interesting concept. I think in this game, you wanted Burton to be the guy to have the ball in his hands at the very end, because I think you wanted Burton. You knew it was going to be a situation where you were going to drive for the game-winning basket, right? And you were going to drive for it and either shoot it and make it and win the game, or draw a foul and go to the line and win the game. And I think you have confidence in both guys shooting free throws. That's not the problem. But I think actually at this point, Cummings get fouled out. So there was no option to go to Nelly Cummings on the final possession there. What am I talking about? Nelly Cummings wasn't even in the game. He had fouled out at that point. If he was in the game, I still think you go with Burton, because I think they're both capable of making the free throws. They can both make jump shots. But Burton's a little bit taller and a little bit more physical, and I think he could drive into the lane and either finish the shot or draw contact in the lane. I think he probably has a better chance of finishing the shot in the lane through contact than Nelly Cummings does, just because of his size and physicality. So that's probably the reason I would go with Burton. He would be the guy I would choose in that situation. Like I say, you trust them both to make the free throws. You feel pretty good about both of their jump shooting abilities, although you don't really want the mid-range jumper there. That's a little too heroic. You really want a guy who's going to drive in, not take a charge, and get to the basket and either finish through contact or draw that contact and go to the free throw line. So I would have put the ball in Burton's hands. That's where the ball belonged. That's where the ball went. They didn't even try to do anything else. They just inbounded it to Burton, and he stood there for 15 seconds and then did exactly that. Drove, got the contact, went to the line, won the game. Simple as that. What a night. What a game for Pitt. Panthers beat North Carolina 65-64. It was fun. I hope you enjoyed the game. I hope you enjoyed the post-game show. It's fun to do these post-game shows. I feel like they have games on the next couple Tuesdays, so we won't have post-game shows after that, but we'll be back with our regular Wednesday night live show at 8:30 right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We appreciate that very much. We also appreciate Chris Gates at chrisgatesfitness.com for supporting the podcast. Make sure you check him out for all your health and fitness needs from a big-time Pitt fan. And I appreciate everybody who tuned in tonight. It's been a lot of fun to talk about the game. I like these post-game shows. It's a good time. We all kind of have a lot of things to say, and a lot of it is the same things to say. We all watch the same game and have the same reactions. But it's fun to have these conversations. So I appreciate everybody who tuned in tonight. Good times. Pitt moves on. Should be it's going to be an interesting rest of the season. Month of February is off to a great start for Pitt. Can't wait to see what it brings next. We'll be back tomorrow morning with a new Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. In the meantime, stay tuned to Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com for all of your Pitt basketball, football, and recruiting coverage. Like I say, thanks again for tuning in tonight or watching the video or listening to the podcast later in the week, wherever it is. But have a great rest of your night. Enjoy the rest of the week. We'll be back to talk to you Thursday morning for the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So have a good time until then. And we will Talk to you soon. Thanks again.